Good morning to you all, and welcome to another edition of the Sal Greco Show, and I'm your host, Sal Greco. Thank you all for being here. I see Lily, Matt O'Brien, the Lone Silencer, 92 Charlie. You guys are always in here. Thank you for being here. You know, if you're watching us on the Sal Greco Show channel on YouTube, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button as well. If you're watching on Rumble, please hit the like button, hit the Rumble button, follow us on there on the Sal Greco Show. And if you're watching on X at the Sal Greco handle, please like this and share this out to all your friends, especially those in the low information bubble. And also, if you just do the audio form of the show, you are on Apple Podcast, you're on Spotify, whatever it is that is streaming right now that pops up on audio form only. Once again, please don't be afraid. Leave a comment, like, share this out, because there are quite a few people listening in audio form only. So there's a lot to get to. And I'm going to have my wingman Jack come on later to discuss some other pressing issues in regards to this. But we begin with what happened last night in New York City in Crown Heights. Just to give you the backdrop here, 770 Eastern Parkway is the Lubavitch headquarters. The Lubavitch community, which I know very well, for people that don't know my history, when I started in the New York City Police Department, my first assignment was the 71st Precinct. I spent many a night having to sit on that very corner of 770 Eastern Parkway. So this incident happened, and it's a little disturbing to see somebody as crazy as this doing this, but let me show you what happened. Let's show everyone.
Yo. Everyone move. Move. What's he doing? What is he doing? Yo! What's wrong with the guy? Someone. Yo, you're gonna get killed. We're gonna kill you. Whoa. Move out. What is it? I don't know. It's fucking liar. Officer here, officer. Yeah, that's him. Stop him. The liar. Shut it off. I'm gonna call him. One thing with witness.
And he's dressed. See this? He's dressed as if he's in Florida, which is a little chilly this week. But I mean, look at this guy. What's wrong with this guy? Dressed like he's in the summertime. It's 20 degrees or less in New York City. He's driving his car like a maniac. And, you know, there's a lot of people that I don't know if there's kind of mentally disturbed or, you know, whatever that is. It's a good job by the 71st Precinct, by the way, that, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on there. At one time when I was working in the 71st Precinct, there was always a vehicle there to prevent something like this. But, you know, there's no personnel in the precincts. Soccer mom, I wonder why. And so this happens. And, of course, let's throw this one out there as well. There's some crime stats there from the 71st Precinct. Richie Taylor. Remember, big deputy chief in community affairs? Where was he last night? I thought he was the liaison for the Jewish community to the mayor. Nobody saw Richie Taylor at all. I mean, if I was him, I'd be worried right now, being under investigation from Internal Affairs, Department of Investigation. But aren't you supposed to go there, guy? What happened there? So no Richie Taylor last night at a major incident at 770 Eastern Parkway. Find that a little odd. But anyway, the cavalry shows up about 2 or 3 hours after. Obviously, this deranged lunatic was placed under arrest, where he should be taken to Kings County Hospital, which is not too far from there, and left in the psych ward, and probably, years worth of therapy on top of the criminal charges that he was going to have to answer to. Mayor Mamdani shows up with the soccer mom. I see Chief LePetri. We'll get to him in 2 seconds. And I don't know, either his eyes are, it's too cold for him, or maybe, I don't know, maybe he had some intoxicants lately. But let's hear Mayor Mamdani in this and this is a pressing matter. He's had an awful day, by the way, yesterday. It was awful for Mamdani, a lot of different ways and what he was saying. But let's hear what he has to say about this issue.
I am relieved that no one was injured in this horrifying incident. This is deeply alarming, especially given the deep meaning and the history of the institution to so many in New York and around the world. And on today of all days, the yard site of Rabbi Schneerson and the leadership of Menachem Mendel Schneerson, any threat to a Jewish institution or place of worship must be taken seriously. Anti-Semitism has no place in our city, and violence or intimidation against Jewish New Yorkers is unacceptable. I stand in solidarity with the Crown Heights Jewish community, and I'm grateful to our first responders for taking swift action. I will keep New Yorkers updated as we learn more about this incident.
Little bit of again, not to be harsh on the guy. You're going to hear me say this over and over again, because as you know, this show I named A Tale of Two Cities. What can I say? Short on specifics. You got to say a little bit more. If I'm him, I'm talking from a political standpoint. There's all this talk that the Jewish community doesn't like him. You should be more on the ball with this, because you could almost say, yes, the guy's a deranged lunatic, but it could be an act of domestic terrorism. Guy trying to drive his car into a sensitive location, which he should be addressing the fact that there's not enough police officers to run around to even do what they used to do in the 71st precinct, because his esteemed police commissioner is too busy flooding transit with the cops that should be working in the 71st precinct and other precincts, so that her friend that's running for governor could say, I stopped crime, you feel safe, all those cops in transit. Meanwhile, you have an incident like last night where, once again, where is the personnel? Oh, that's right, we don't have any, because we're too busy worrying about people's political elections, and that's the problem here. I mean, somebody make me laugh. They're saying he showed up with a shovel. Yeah, Chino 423. Mayor showed up with his shovel. Ouch. Yeah, I mean, this is, that's what we're, what this looks like. But I think that was the press conference was, they were giving a couple of details. You'll hear more as time goes on. Obviously, it looks like just the deranged guy. It could be more. We'll wait to see all the facts trickle out. But again, Mamdani was short on his response. And I'm not trying to be too critical, but we are critical of our elected officials here on this show. I would thought you would hear a lot more and how he's tighter with the community. I thought, where's Richie Taylor, Deputy Chief of Community Affairs? That he is the liaison to the community. I guess he wasn't informing Mr. Mamdani about anything, or the soccer mom. Something was up with that one. So to stay on the New York City Police Department, right? And before we do that, I just want to give a big shout out here to Frankie Palaguacci, a very good friend of the show. He's been through a lot. He still is dealing with a lot with his unlawful termination at the hands of the New York City Police Department. $499.99 to the Sal Greco Show. You are very generous, Frankie. And there's going to be so much cafecito today that we might need defibrillators and nurses on standby for all that caffeine. Says, thank you, Sal. Keep us informed. God bless you and this show. Well, God bless you too, Frankie, because you're a big supporter of the show. We support you as well. And we're here, and we have your back with anything. So thank you very much, Frankie, who's, he is going through a lot. So people should go try to help him out as well, because he's trying to get his, stand on his own 2 feet again. It's not easy. I could tell you, when you get terminated unjustly and get smeared, and, you're trying to recover from this, and people get doing value judgments, because that's what they do. They'll read a headline and go, oh, well, you got terminated for this, so that's who you are. Meanwhile, that's not true, but NYPD doesn't correct the ledger until long after the fact. So, but to go back to an incident, this show was the first to report on the incident that occurred on the Taconic Parkway with Sergeant, what was her name, Howell or Hopewell, and she had an accident. She drove, I believe, southbound on the northbound lanes of the Taconic Parkway between exits 3 and 4, and hit another vehicle head on, which caused the fatality. And now I believe that gentleman's name is Botel's the last name. And unfortunately, that individual, Manuel Botel of Peekskill, a doorman of 30 years, perished. He was just coming home from work. Okay? Tiffany Howell, that's her name. So a lot of these Joe Coppers jump to conclusions. She came home from work. She was tired. I specifically laid out the facts of this case, but some want to run with their bizarre Joe Cop narratives. And I will go back to reference a point. When I exposed what was going on at everyone's favorite hangout in the New York City Police Department, apparently, was Con Sofrito in the Bronx. A lot of Joe Coppers came after me. You were putting a little, you putting a little emoji of a rat. All these cop lingo. Because listen, Joe Cop is the cop version of one of the worst and least informed people you're going to find. They're very good with, they love to give these details of, they think they know everything. They think they know everyone, but the facts are they know nothing at all. And they'll be the first to run. About a week after I started exposing everything, and they wrote an article about Con Sofrito, Joe Cop disappeared. And then, yeah, man, we shouldn't be hanging out over there anymore. So this is what transpired at this accident. This accident that occurred, obviously, it was about 11:30 at night. So a call comes over then to the New York City Police Department, obviously identified it's a MOS, a member of service involved in an accident. So the duty captain must show up. So let's show who this duty captain is from the Bronx that came to the scene. Stephen L. Aramonic. I hope I have his last name right. He's from the 49th precinct. He was the duty captain on a midnight, which is this occurred after midnight. There's only one duty captain that could show up. Captain Aramonic, hope you had his name right. He shows up to the scene and determines that the sergeant should be suspended. Why? Why should she be suspended? Because she is intoxicated. Do you know how we know this? I've been telling you all this over and over again through various sources. EMS was there and said she was intoxicated. Now I'm also getting, and I also had it back when this originally happened, through even more sources, that she was offered a breathalyzer and she didn't take the breathalyzer, which makes it an automatic arrest, like I was saying. Sorry, Joe Cop, who thinks they know everything. So then the duty captain now must go up the chain and calls the duty inspector. And we'll show you who the duty inspector was. There you go, Kathleen E. Fahey. She's from Patrol Borough Bronx. She's the duty inspector. She now knows that this person is supposed to be suspended. She's learning of the facts. So remember that the captain is on the scene. I'm not sure that this inspector is on the scene, but then the inspector has to call who? The duty chief. And we'll show you who the duty chief was. Janice L. Holmes. She's the duty chief. She's also the chief at the moment of Patrol Services Bureau. She's the 1-star. So obviously when the 3-star, the 2-star aren't around, she has to handle everything. Chief Holmes showed up to the scene, probably way after the fact, because now, remember, the duty captain at 12:30, he has to go on the scene. All this stuff, it's always a delayed reaction. So obviously, this sergeant was suspended and then all of a sudden and just modified. So again, through the sources, they're saying it was Chief LaPetri or someone in this hemisphere of his office called to change this. There were a lot of phone calls being made. Remember that the party that she was at and had other people there from various other offices in the New York City Police Department. Okay? Right here, we're showing you New York law enforcement can secure an electric warrant for a blood test when a driver suspected of impairment refuses a breathalyzer. So there was a lot going on the scene. What's going on the scene? Oh, people can reference whatever and say whatever about if you don't do the breathalyzer, because the next question and the most important question is, besides not, the suspension turn modification, why didn't the troopers arrest her? What's going on there? Are there phone calls being made to the barracks? Because it's an automatic arrest. See, because now we're going to show on the screen what happened just the other day. And we got this one from my previous guest on the last show, retired NYPD Lieutenant Joel Ramirez. Okay. And he put this out. And he was talking about how she could maneuver to avoid losing her pension. If you remember, he was stating this on this show. And exactly what he said is exactly what is happening here. Howell, meanwhile, rushed to file for a pension, securing a 30 to 40% pension as she vested early from the police department. How convenient. Let's not forget the sergeant was allegedly drinking and driving, yet she hasn't faced any real consequences. Who advised her to retire? It's clear she had connections among the higher-ups in the police department because the party was in Scarsdale. And if you go down, there's the official order of her vesting out in the police department right here. 2 days after she went to the hospital, I thought she had all these injuries, but she didn't have that didn't stop her from going to vest out. Here is one of the pictures from the scene. So now you know a lot more, and there's a lot more questions than answers. And this kind of garbage happens a lot in the police department that you don't know about concerning people in the circle of cronyism and nepotism. So now you know who the captain was, who the inspector was, and who the duty chief was. They all did the right thing, what you're supposed to do by NYPD protocols, procedures, and the law. Somehow, someone, whether it's LaPetri or someone in his office and in his circle, directed and ordered her not to be suspended and change it to being modified. And then you have the state troopers who have an arrest and don't affect the arrest and come up with the toxicology nonsense. It's an arrest, folks. Now, it's a sad situation, but I was always taught something in the police department, this one term we all used. It is what it is. So sorry for people. And it's unbelievable. Joe Kopp will still talk about this and absolutely disregard the loss of life. That is disgusting. And soon that family is going to come calling for a nice attorney to go after the police department and the state troopers to find out what the hell happened here and what kind of, this is why I said there was a cover up. But Joe Kopp running around, saying, in the locker room, jumping on top of the benches saying, oh, we got to defend this. This is right. No. And no, it's not a hypocritical arrest for those who like to say that. And I guess this was the president of the state troopers. We have been deeply saddened to learn about the passing of a union. This was the Manuel Botel. This is his union president. Loss of life. Nobody cares, right? Nobody's saying a word about that. It's like it never happened. Unbelievable. And I do see some of the comments, a lot of guys like Michael M's always in it. He says the Taconic Parkway high crash rate. Some analysis listed Taconic as one of the most collision prone or deadliest roads in New York State with thousands of crashes over multi-year periods. Correct. But how do you go northbound in a southbound lane or southbound in a northbound lane? Remember, there's a divider on that highway. You'd have to smash that. Then, listen, you want to know another little tidbit? Again, through sources, she was at the party. She didn't feel good because she was drinking. Someone there should have thought, hey, cab, I'll drive you home. They asked someone, I'm okay. These are the things that could happen. But I know for a fact she was at the party, didn't feel good. And, of course, now you know what happened. So maybe people should start being responsible, because this happens to happen all the time in the police department. Very bad decisions. But there's some of the latest on that. So I was saving that one for the show so I could inform everybody that was watching. Now, if you don't know, I'm having an event here in South Florida with the Italian-American Civil Rights League. So this is the Florida chapter kickoff on March 11th. And you could go to the iacrl.org, so where you can also become a member, and then you could come to our event. In our event, we're going to honor my friend Roger Stone at Casa Calabria, which is one of the best restaurants down here. March 11th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. There's going to be a lot of people there already, a lot of people in the Italian-American Civil Rights League, which, again, you could join. You could join our organization, and we're going to have events, and we're going to have hopefully we could have festivals right down here in South Florida. But we are in different states as well. But, of course, I have my hand in the Florida chapter. So that's going to be the big kickoff for Florida. So if you can, please, iacrl.org, join our organization. And then you could come to our event where we're going to honor Roger Stone. You can meet Roger. And there's plenty of members that, will say, you see them, and you're not going to see them all the time, but they're going to be there. Some that are almost as infamous, we'll say, as Roger. So come check that out, iacrl.org. Come see us at our event. And, of course, I don't get my news from major search engines because I don't want biased news. So you should check out Free Spoke. Now, I know you're tired of searching on the web for things and not getting the results you're looking for. I have something for you. Free Spoke. Free Spoke is a search engine that is all about authenticity rather than agendas. Labels, media bias, no intrusions, or data leaking or your data being taken from you. Porn free, none of those ads, unlimited, unbiased AI, deep dive podcast searching, and you can get it by going to freespoke.app.link/Greco. Use the same link to get a 35% discount on your premium subscription. What are you waiting for, folks? This is the way of the future. Free Spoke. There you have it, folks. Greco 35, get your 35% discount. Head there. Free Spoke. It works just like ChatGPT, and you won't get this biased headlines. There's a lot of them going out there as we speak with current events. I see the comments too. Gino423 said, Roger's one cool dude. Love his 8 p.m. show on 77 WABC. The only show I listen to on that station, by the way, as you know how I feel. And yes, someone asked if he was Italian. Roger is half Sicilian, just so you know. The name Stone is kind of like was picked out when his ancestors came here and to the country. He is Sicilian. In fact, the last name I believe is Corbo, which is a Sicilian last name. Remember, he's from Norwalk, Connecticut. He's not from New York, although he lived there. He's from Norwalk, Connecticut. A nice little small rural town. I've been there. Very nice. But once again, check it out, iacrl.org. There was another little tidbit of news coming from New York City again. Mamdani's got a lot to deal with, but corrections. I made this video the other day, and I'll play it for you in regards to corrections and what's going on with that. So let's play this.
Apparently now the federal government has finally appointed an independent administrator to Rikers Island. That person's name is Nicholas Demmel. Nicholas Demmel was a former corrections commissioner in the state of Vermont and also happened to work for the CIA at some point. So we'll see where his expertise is with handling the correction system and the ongoing issues that have happened at Rikers, because remember, they need to have this corrected before Rikers is supposed to close, allegedly. We saw Mayor Mamdani's spokesperson be ecstatic over this, but yet the mayor should realize that he actually still has the same corrections commissioner, McGillney-Liddy, that Eric Adams had, and that commissioner has overworked her correction officers, B, gives them double and triple overtime shifts. They never go home. They're having all kinds of staff issues. Staffing is a problem. But yet Mamdani is mum on that. So I guess we're going to keep her as the correction commissioner. And I wonder what the union has to say about that.
Very interesting that so Nicholas Demmel was picked, a CIA guy who was a former corrections commissioner in Vermont, is now the administrator from the federal court as the this receivership, by the way, and he's going to be the representative and running things and trying to smooth over all the issues in Rikers. But the problem again with this is going to be that this happened under 3 mayors. They let 3 mayors have to handle this problem. It's only now has it come to a head. De Blasio kicked this down the road. Eric Adams, God knows what he was doing because he sent all the wrong people to run corrections, including the person that's still there. And the real problem here, Mayor Mamdani, is the person that's there, McGillney-Liddy, nice person. Don't get me wrong with that. She's a lawyer. She doesn't understand corrections culture. She never wore that uniform. Therefore, what you're seeing in corrections right now falls on her lap because what is she doing? Other than overworking all the correction officers, double shifts, 12-hour shifts, 16, they don't go home. They have a staffing issue. And they have all the nonsense that goes on in each facility that she's in charge of. She doesn't understand the culture. Therefore, what do you think's going on? What you have today, you have all these lawsuits with the deaths occurring under corrections custody. You have the conditions of the jails, correction officers, one corrections officer going around with multiple prisoners, and they get beat up, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff that goes on. That's all under her watch. She is someone that I don't understand why you left in charge, yet you're the mayor. I thought you were bringing bringing your own people in. We haven't seen that. So this is a step in the right direction that they finally, something is going to move forward. But again, still the same corrections commissioner, so you still have the same issues. Still the same issues. Now we get to this press conference yesterday, right? There was this press conference with Mamdani. Let me show you at least one clip of some of the stuff that was being said and what he was doing yesterday. He's all over the place, by the way.
We had an honest and firm disagreement on it, and I made very clear that the city cares deeply about public safety because usually that is the justification for all of these kinds of actions. And what I said is that to deliver that public safety, we have the NYPD. We do not need ICE to be operating here within New York City, creating a climate of terror and fear amongst New Yorkers, no matter their immigration status. And I think this is what it comes back to, is that I hear from so many people in our city who tell me that they are fearful of even leaving their home because of what they see ICE doing on a daily basis. We're talking about a federal agency that is pulling people out of their cars, out of their homes, out of their lives, that is killing people in this country. And you're asking people to still believe in government. It is a very difficult mismatch.
Are you afraid that something like that could happen here in New York City?
I'm doing everything I can to ensure that it never does. And I think that it is a fear that many New Yorkers have. And my job is to show them that I'm the mayor of this entire city, which includes more than 3 million New Yorkers who are immigrants, myself included.
Yeah. So listen, I respect whatever, his side of the ledger, his side of the argument. He is the mayor, and they do have to follow the laws here. And again, you're not allowed to cooperate with. It's been going on forever in New York City with the NYPD, with corrections. You can't just cooperate with ICE. There is communication, though. There are people that are held on ICE detainers, they're felons, all that stuff. That you can communicate with, but you can't do civil enforcement with them, which is the old, what you're seeing all over the country. So now, without any further ado, to discuss this and a lot more in regards to everything that happened in the last 48 hours with Mamdani is none other than the producer, the co-host, the wingman of the Sal Greco Show, Jack Stern. Welcome back, Jack.
Yeah, thank you, Sal. Where is my partner in crime designation? That was the one I was actually hoping for the most, and then I heard you excluded it and got a little bit sad when you introduced me. But it's okay. I'll forgive you. There's so many other things to talk about relating to Zohran Mamdani, the budget, ICE, all that other stuff. So let's move on and enjoy the show.
Yeah. But so what is your take on that little comment of his? I agree. Listen, he's allowed to do this. The mayor. People need to realize there's constitutional crisis here because you have a federal, you have a state, you have a local, and the power is always in the state, not the federal law. Like, yeah, the federal laws, our federal's up here, but the states have their own laws. So if they don't want to do this cooperation, they don't have to. Neither does the city. People need to read those laws, even though we don't. Some people don't like it. Like, I think you should cooperate, but again, there's a law that says that you can't just do that. So why take us through this first part, and then there's more to this press. There's a press conference stuff. So take it away, Jack.
Yeah, he said some crazy things about the budget too. So we'll get to that. He made some crazy comments yesterday, and then he really bent a knee to Governor Kathy Hochul, threatening to slash the budget itself. Yikes, right? We'll get to that in a second. But as it pertains to ICE, let's just do a little bit of a test and remove ICE from New York City, stop them from deporting dangerous members of Tren de Aragua and other gangs which have terrorized Times Square and other areas, and let's see what happens, right? Because Zohran Mamdani is going to be held accountable for anything and everything as well, whether it be anti-Semitic hate crimes in Brooklyn, crimes committed by illegal immigrants. So if he wants safe streets, he cannot abolish ICE. He cannot kick them out of New York City. If he actually wants them to be deporting less people, then what he needs to do is lobby for legislative changes. The issue with Mamdani is he doesn't know how to get legislation passed. So he comes up with these crazy, overly optimistic promises. And then when it comes time to follow through on them, he quickly pivots to the next thing just so that we forget about what he promised initially. It's the same thing with ICE, right? He's talking about we need to abolish them. We need to get rid of them. What happened to our free bus service, to our city-owned grocery stores, to freezing the rent? I know it's like 1 degree in New York City right now, but the only thing that's not frozen is the rent, right? People's rents are still going up. So he's not really working toward anything progress-wise. It's all about pontificating for the camera and trying to appease his loony, lefty-leaning constituents. Also, you don't know what's going on in the conversations between him and President Trump. He could be saying one thing in front of the camera and then saying something entirely different when he's actually on the phone with him in a one-on-one setting.
Yeah, and I'm always looking at things too from a political lens. Obviously, I got quite some history behind being involved in politics. And again, you have to. He's kind of gaslighting. What I've been trying to say is, with everything in the last 40 hours, he's kind of gaslighting his base. But there's a lot of talk, but whether it's achievable. By the way, there's like zero specifics. Also, abolish. How are you going to abolish an entire unit? Because you technically would still need them. And to be honest, if I'm Homeland Security in any of these cities or states, they may not allow you to be hanging around in Rikers or whatever the correctional facilities are, but you are allowed to hang around in the courts. you are allowed to hang out outside. All you need to do is you have a civil enforcement, like a warrant for something, you can enact that as far as the federal government goes. What you can't do is the stuff that we're seeing where ICE doesn't know how to handle, car stops, the normal population, because they're not, these group of guys that have been running around, it's clearly not trained. And we'll get to that in a little later. But Jack, what else was being said by Mamdani? Is there's so much in the last 48 hours?
Yeah, so this is kind of the classic back page from the Daily News today. I think it was representative of what Mamdani said yesterday and then what he said today, again, on CNBC, which we'll show you in a second here. But the headline, you can put this right in the Louvre next to the Mona Lisa. It's not my fault. Mamdani blames Adams for $12 billion budget gap as he ramps up efforts to tax the rich. So just in case anyone didn't know, Eric Adams was the mayor before Zohran Mamdani took over. He did mismanage the budget, but guess who the comptroller was? The person who's supposed to be the chief financial officer in charge of managing payrolls, pensions, all that stuff. I mean, the pension system is totally underwater because of this man. It's Brad Lander. Brad Lander was out campaigning for Zohran Mamdani and tooting his horn and blowing his whistle and getting people to vote for him. But at the end of the day, Mamdani kind of left him on the curb with his hand out saying, "Where are my crumbs?" a la Tim Pearson style, because Mamdani never gave Lander a job within his administration. He never offered him any sort of deputy mayor position or anything like that. Instead, he gave him a half-hearted, lukewarm endorsement for Congress, which is never going to mean anything because House Democrats in Washington hate Brad Lander. If you want to blame the culprit who's really responsible for all of this, you need to blame the man who was out helping get you elected for mayor that you actually didn't trust because you realize that he's incompetent, untrustworthy, and just totally unreliable when it comes to anything financially related. Look at how he funneled $500 million to nonprofits, one of which was managed by his wife. So it's widespread ineptitude that contributed to the problem at hand, yet Mamdani doesn't really want to recognize that when diagnosing the issue, which is wholly irresponsible because you're lying to all of the people living in your city about this. And just to give some context to this is one important thing that we need to know. The budget in New York City last year was $112 billion. We move over to the payroll here, it was about $34.5 million. So for those of you who are math majors in college, you can do a calculation and realize that New York City spent about a third of its total budget just on payroll, and a lot of that was eaten up by stupid overtime costs, as we've talked about extensively on this platform.
You know why? Because there's been a permanent bureaucracy in this city government forever. If you really look at it, mayors come and go, just like presidents come and go. that permanent state inside there, they're the ones that run the show and they call the shots. And unless you're willing to kick all the rocks wherever they may land, you're never going to change this. So clearly, the permanent bureaucracy here is what's running everything. As far as finances, day-to-day operations, yeah, the mayor, he's the CEO. We could do a lot, but all these people, like Brad Lander, there was zero checks and balances with this guy. I mean, he did one thing at the very end with that report or whatever it was he gave. What about everything else going on for the last 8 years? Where were you? Like, so Brad Lander, that whole part, he's talking about the budget. And listen, I understand this, Mr. Mayor. I understand Eric Adams. Yes, he has criminal tendencies. He was horrible mayor, all that good stuff. I agree with you and a lot, the super majority of New Yorkers and probably the whole country in regards to how you feel about Eric Adams' behavior and his actions. But now you're the mayor. You can't look in the rearview mirror. You can tell the public, I inherited a $12 billion deficit, deficit. But what are you going to do about it? Because what he did yesterday to me, Jack, seems like a social media garb. This whole social media thing because Eric Adams had something to say, so he's got to have something to say. But he's irrelevant. He's no longer the mayor. We don't look in the rearview mirrors. You got to look forward. You're the mayor. You're the person that's going to be pushing all the levers to push the city forward. Stop looking behind. What are you doing to cut the deficit? Which I heard he said some crazy stuff about what he wanted. What was he going to do? He wants to add to it. He would actually make the deficit even higher instead of saying at a certain point he's going to have to cut programs, whatever it is, to get this budget back in order, back where it belongs. It's way too high right now. And he's talking about bringing in programs. And so he's making things worse, Jack. But you can't look in the rearview mirrors. You have to look forward. Eric Adams is not the answer to all the problems that happen. He's gone. What are you going to do? You're the new mayor. You got elected. What are you doing?
Exactly. When he was on the campaign trail, all we heard about was how he was going to be active and very creative when it came to raising funds to be funding all of these programs. Yet the minute that he's elected and actually has to do it, he comes up with every excuse known to mankind and dives away from all of the accountability for people who are in his inner circle, which is very childish when you think about it. And then today, earlier, he was doing an interview on CNBC, and he was asked about budget cuts again. And he said, then all it leaves the city with are the most painful tools, he says, adding that cuts are a last resort. So he's floating the possibility of cutting various city-related programs if Governor Kathy Hochul doesn't tax the rich. He's threatening Hochul at this point, right? Like, this is clearly an active threat. Like, if you don't tax the rich by 2% or 1% or whatever it is, then I'm going to have to cut various city budgets, and I'm going to cut programs, and it's going to impact the most vulnerable populations within the city, and it's going to hit them the hardest. And I'm going to point my finger at you. I'm going to blame you because you don't want to tax the rich people. But if we tax the rich people, they're all going to want to leave, and we're going to have no taxpayer revenue to begin with. So that's not a viable solution either. Zohran, if you want to raise taxpayer revenue, you have to figure out other ways to do so. You have to get creative. I know you failed to do that in the assembly. You didn't know anything about managing the city or state budget there. I don't know why people thought you would know how to manage the budget from City Hall. But anyway, like, this is where the rubber meets the road, and you have to figure out solutions that are finding common ground. This petty aggressiveness between him and Kathy Hochul, who I like to describe as his political grandmother because she just pushes him around, tells him what to do, was even going out and informing voters about ballot initiatives on Election Day when he hadn't even taken a stance on any of them yet. Like, she's determining all of the policies. He has no control over anything. And all he does is throw these passive aggressive comments out on social media and in interviews. And it's really not effectively solving the problem at hand either, which is that there's a budget deficit and he's not doing anything to raise additional funds. How about you incentivize bringing businesses to New York City, bringing richer people to New York, getting other corporations that left the city to potentially come back, because that's a huge problem as well. You're not doing any of that. Instead, you're talking about standing up to billionaires and doing things that are actually going to end up hurting the most poor people in your city when you consider that their taxes are going to end up increasing if you can't increase the tax on the wealthy.
Yeah, he also wanted to tax things by neighborhoods, meaning the Caucasian ones. Remember that one? Which was ridiculous. That was another. Talk about racist rhetoric / DEI initiatives there. He wants to tax people based on the color of their skin and how much they make. That was one of his things. I said, I mean, I understand you're trying to get elected and you want to play to these nut jobs that are in the city, which now you have to realize that the voting block that pushed this guy in is between 18 and 30. And I say you shouldn't even be voting till you're 25 because you heard free. And you're dirt poor because you came to the city thinking you're going to be rich overnight. And here he is, and you never looked into the real issues, like I was saying, for months, whereas Curtis Sliwa had the answers and would have actually executed the things that he was saying. This guy cannot do it. And we're going to get to something else he said in regards to SRG, and it involves this whole party. But, right here, Danny J. Hulk, shout out to you, Danny. He says 22 billion. He said 12 plus 10 for all this nonsense. He was going to add to it. It's actually 22 billion is the answer to that question. When he said 12 billion, how much the deficit is? Now it's actually going to be 22 because of him. And stay trained up. What happened to the free transportation? And gullible New Yorkers actually bought into this BS. They deserve Mamdani. It's fair. It's a fair assumption of what, what's going on. Brooklyn girl NYC says, shouldn't Mayor Mamdani worry about the issues in the 5 boroughs, especially the rat issues? Yeah, I guess that never got resolved. We had a lot of the garbage cans out there too. That was another thing with the sanitation with Eric Adams. He inherited. Here's Anthony DiMaggio. Shout out to you. Hochul has to worry about how Mamdani makes it look because New York City elects the governor of the state as well as their mayor. That is 100% true. That is 100% true. I am proud. Says Jack is doing a great job ripping Zohran a new a-hole. And morning oil. Shout out.
That was a nice sequence. He said, I did a good job ripping into Mamdani, and then he casually said, good morning. I like that IMP, Franco. We have to tell people the truth about Mamdani. And to Anthony's point, I mean, I think he makes a good point about the weird relationship dynamic between Hochul and Mamdani, where Mamdani's publicly supporting Hochul to help her save face within the Democratic Party, yet Hochul is doing all of his legislative bidding up in Albany and determining all of the policies. They weirdly need each other in this mutually beneficial relationship, yet they're having a tough time managing it publicly, and especially behind closed doors where you can tell there's a lot of conflict and disagreement, even if they don't want to openly acknowledge it.
You know what? 92 Charlie, I think he has the best quote. Sal Mamdani is a charismatic empty suit. I said that. He has the look. He has the charm. He has the swagger, but he doesn't deliver. That's the problem. His whole history was that, and yet somehow he bamboozled the 18 to 30 crowd who think, the sunshine and rainbow is waiting for you out there. And that's not the reality, folks. And now you're seeing the problem here. So before we do this next thing, because I mentioned people in this party, remember you mentioned Chao Say, isn't he?
Yeah, Chao Say, city council member, who also played a large role in getting Zohran Mamdani elected amongst the 18 to 30-year-old demographic. But if you guys will also remember, we're going to play a video of him talking about abolishing ICE in a second. He was not invited to Zohran Mamdani's watch party on Election Day, where he was charging $15 for a 12-ounce beer because he was threatening to run for Congress against Hakeem Jeffries, and Mamdani was upset about that, potentially disrupting the movement within the Democratic Party. So he decided to distance himself from Osei for a little while, went to a town hall, which Osei attended, and said, you can't run for Congress, don't do it. And then when the Democratic Socialists of America rejected Osei, and Osei came running back to the city council because he didn't want to be without a job, Mamdani kind of reeled him back in and said, all right, buddy, we're friends again. But Osei put out this weird video talking about abolishing ICE, yet he didn't talk about how he wanted to do it. Watch this.
Let's hear.
What's crazy to me about Democrats who are still refusing to call for the abolition of ICE is that they're acting like it's some foundational agency within the United States when truly it was founded in 2003. Like, the TSA is older than ICE. I'm older than ICE. Most of you watching this are older than ICE. There was an America, and there will be an America that exists after ICE is abolished. We move into these midterm elections. The standard that we should have for all Democrats in unison should be for them to abolish ICE. I don't want to hear anything about reforming ICE. There is no reforming this rogue agency that didn't exist, prior to 2003. We're not crazy. We're not radical for calling for the abolition of ICE. In fact, we need more prosecution after ICE is abolished for individuals who participated in these criminal acts that we are seeing ICE do in our country. But for now, the standard from Senate Democrats, from House Democrats, from each and every single one of you should be to abolish this agency.
So Osei has stooped to such a low level morality-wise that he's trying to appease like far loony lefty-leaning members of the Democratic Party. Everyone wants to talk about the divide within the Republican Party and MAGA right now, but really the biggest divide actually exists within the Democratic Party, where more moderate Democrats, especially in Washington, are saying, whoa, what's going on with this radical movement in New York, in Minneapolis, in Chicago, in Philadelphia, and in Boston? So they're upset about what's going on, and now Osei is waging a war and using his constituents kind of as a pawn in the situation, right? Because he's kind of trying to cater to them and everything that he's saying and doing, yet he looks like an idiot because he's talking about, yes, America did exist before ICE, but before we had ICE, the streets were a lot more dangerous. There were illegal immigrants running wild. We created ICE as an agency because they're necessary. We're not bussing in agents and bringing them in from out of town for no reason. We need them to perform an essential job, and you do not want to deal with the aftermath and the consequences of not having them be in your neighborhood, especially when they were coming into Crown Heights and parts of North Brooklyn and continuing to deport people even after Mamdani was elected. We're not fooled, and we're not stupid, and we're not foolish, Chai. Come on, go home.
Yeah. This guy, Chai, I'm going to say, he's trying to make a few good points that you might have a problem with certain ICE agents' actions. We'll get to that in a little bit. You might have an issue with how they implemented some of the things they've done, because ICE, you have to understand, Homeland Security has an umbrella, and it's two agencies in one right now running around doing what you're seeing. Some of the actions are pitiful. Some of the actions, you're not supposed to just get up in their faces. They shouldn't be in the cities. There's a lot going on with that. But then how he talks about it, that's the presentation. He is leaning one way to his crazy constituent base that are a bunch of radicals, because he's saying abolish this. I'm older than them. That his rhetoric is tailored for his base, but it's not tailored for the rest of the world, because he has a crazy take on it when it really should be, if there's anyone who's violated the law, whether it be an ICE agent, whether it be the mayor, we're going to look at this. They should be looked into, investigated. And if they found to do anything that's criminal or anything that's, they could be held liable for, we will prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. He comes in and says all this other rhetoric that's all gaslighting everyone. Boom. And now you have this viral moment, which is what these guys are all about, and you can't abolish ICE. And let me tell you something. Again, what you're seeing in the street and what the reality is, ICE goes in the street, what you're seeing, right, and what they actually do, they do the civil enforcement. They also do the criminal enforcement, all right? And we'll get to what I believe is they have a quota system and how many people, because I thought we're just going to go after really bad guys that are wanted on ICE detainer warrants and they're really criminals too. We're just going to, I don't know, they're running around in the streets and there's no leadership going on. So to that point, he has a point, but then the way he makes the point makes them look ridiculous, Jack.
Yeah, no, and it's also kind of sad in a sense, because he's doing this to appease to the extremist members of the Democratic Party, yet a lot of the Democrats who represent these districts in Washington are doing anything and everything to distance themselves from the Looney Tunes in New York City, whether it be Brad Lander or Chai Osei. Just look at how Hakeem Jeffries didn't just distance himself from Osei, but he pretty much denounced him and said, yeah, well, he's not really a member of the Democratic Party. His ideological beliefs are a little crazy, right? So like, same thing with Chuck Schumer and Brad Lander, same thing with Nancy Pelosi. And if you know that if Nancy Pelosi is giving someone the red light to run for public office, they really must have jumped off the deep end, right? Yeah. So that's the case with Brad Lander. And it's weird that they keep talking about abolishing law enforcement agencies when these are the same people who are floating the idea of a $1 billion Department of Community Safety, which will never actually work, right? So it's like you want to have a collaborative effort between social workers and law enforcement agencies, and you want to ramp that up to the tune of $1 billion. Yet you have ICE agents coming in from out of town to get rid of the most violent offenders in your city, and you want to throw a big deal, throw this big commotion about it? Come on. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And listen, there's an argument to be made that if you want to stick up for some of the people who have not committed crimes that are here illegally without green cards or whatever, you want to give them a path to getting one, you can find a way to do so. But making a Looney Tune video where you're calling for the abolishment of ICE is not an effective tactic. They just haven't realized it.
So Joel Ramirez had this comment. So this is a good one. The creation of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, in response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks significantly impacted various aspects of national security, including immigration enforcement. There's a little bit of history. I don't know. This child say, I don't know if he knows any of this history. That's what their designation was. And we actually needed that at that time. And it also, they do other kind of enforcement as well in regards to immigration, especially on the borders. obviously TSA, and he's saying he's older than them. I have no idea what that means. But again, this is the crowd that hangs around Mamdani, or he likes these people or something. But now, to go back to Mr. Mayor, the Mayor Mamdani there, that press conference also, he referenced disbanding SRG. SRG is the Strategic Response Group of the New York City Police Department, okay? And you can't just disband them because there's no plan, and they were created. I understand there's lawsuits pending on them, meaning there was lawsuits, the whole protest, which, by the way, that was Eric Adams' fault that he just agreed to whatever he should have been fighting that in court because he gave away so much with that whole protest settlement. But they got SRG on the hook. More than likely, they're going to try to change the name from SRG to, I don't know, Mamdani's Boys, whatever he wants to name this group. But he's wrong in saying completely disband them. So let's play this. I made this video yesterday when the news got out of what he said. So let's play this.
At a recent press conference, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani was asked about his campaign promise of disbanding SRG, the Strategic Response Group from the New York City Police Department. And let's hear what his answer was to that.
Yes, I continue to believe that we need to disband the SRG. And I'm currently in conversations with the police commissioner about the ways in which we can do so that are operational. And I believe that we should do so not on the basis of any fiscal need, but frankly on the need to decouple the counterterrorism responsibilities within the department from police response to First Amendment exercise.
Once again, Mayor Mamdani is big with the word salads, but short on specifics. The problem with disbanding SRG, the Strategic Response Group in the New York City Police Department, is that protests will now become a problem. Why? SRG is specifically trained to respond to protests because they are the disorder control unit. They are trained to use long guns in the proper manner. They're trained to do mass arrests. They also have the personnel to be out there. The precinct, which would now handle these things, if there is no SRG, all these protests, they don't have the training. It would cost a lot of money to now train 30,000 people to do what SRG does because you want to disband them. And by the way, fiscally, that might really hurt your budget, Zohran Mamdani. Oh, by the way, you said you're speaking to the police commissioner. That would be news to all of us because that is not what's happening right now. The soccer mom and you do not speak. So good one, Zohran. So in layman's terms, disbanding SRG will not only fiscally hurt New York City, it will also come to the detriment of everyone's public safety.
So look, what I'm stating here, Jack, and I want you to take too, because you have the other look of a concerned citizen / civilian, right?
Right.
In the New York City Police Department, I don't care. And listen, I don't want to hear about the CCRB complaints and all this other stuff. This is the bottom line. The police department trains certain officers or certain groups to do certain things. And it takes a lot of money and training. They got to get grants from the federal government because the counterterrorism part of this, which is a group in SRG that does that, which is CRC, it should be CRC, but they get training specifically from the federal government to train a certain amount of officers. They get federal grants. They use also the training for the long guns, all this stuff, disorder control, the shield, wearing the helmet, mass arrest. They have to do formations. This is a specific group of cops because if you were to train 30,000 plus police officers, your budget would, it's about, I don't know, maybe 5,000 an officer, maybe more to train them for each. How many can you afford all of that? Start thinking in your head what this would take. They also have specialized vehicles. Those vehicles would now need a bunch of them in the precinct. They don't even have any vehicles. And when you find out, I'm going to give a little tidbit later about, I'm going to make a post about something that I'm getting more facts about regards of vehicles in front of certain people's homes. That's another story. But all that money that you use to train these people, this is a fiscal matter. I'm just looking at it fiscally. What he's trying to say, we're going to decouple and make it First Amendment. Cops defend your rights. That's what they do. They sit there to stop civil unrest and to be the peacemaker and be the middle people from having absolute chaos and savagery in the streets. They are trained for this. Disorder control, the long guns. They have multiple units inside SRG to handle the counterterrorism aspect, which gets federal grants to train them. Where is he getting the money to then fund 30,000 plus people to do it? And by the way, if you remove them, all those mass protests, which you have, which is one like every single day, every hour in New York City, you don't have the personnel in the precincts to go and handle that. There's only 100 plus cops in each precinct, and you don't even have them because your soccer mom police commissioner wants to send a number of them to transit. Did we forget about that? Where are you coming up with the personnel and the budget to do what you want to do? Because if you disband them today, there is no other unit. There is no one else that's trained like SRG. So from that, politically speaking, which is all he's doing, he's trying to gaslight us. It's not feasible. And from the police department's aspect, you're going to blow the budget trying to fix this problem that's in his head. I can understand rebranding the name maybe from SRG to whatever the hell you want to make it, but you're not disbanding the group. That is complete gaslighting, and that's my little take on that with some quick facts that let's not worry about all these other technical stuff, because technically all that matters is it feasible money-wise, and can you do this personnel-wise? And the answer is both no.
The problem with Mamdani and a lot of the radical extremists who work in the New York City Council and elsewhere, other areas of New York City government, is that their perception about what's going on with the SRG unit is tainted by bad personal experiences encountering them at protests or in other social situations, right? They might have seen them make an unjust arrest. They might have felt like they were roughhoused by people who were working within the union. And as such, they're walking around with a chip on their shoulder and a grudge about what the unit is actually doing. And they're kind of unaware on a lot of levels about what their tasks actually are. In reality, if you remove the SRG unit, given the amount of crime that's taking place on the New York City streets right now, given the mayhem that's occurring at protests, there is going to be a number of people who are hurt, and someone might even be killed in a tragic accident. Because the fact of the matter is, New York City is prime territory right now when it comes to protesting and rioting and demonstrating, whatever you want to call it. So if you take away the SRG unit, there is going to be no order and control at any of these events. You see videos of them from nowadays, and I mean, guys are getting their gates moved. The cops are holding up gates and they're getting thrown backwards because there's so many people. Given the city's population, you can't get rid of a unit that handles crowd control and such violent encounters that they have to deal with in other parts of the 5 boroughs when they work in collaboration with the ESU unit as well. So there's really no path to disbanding the SRG unit. And similar to ICE or reducing the headcount of the NYPD, you know what? If you want to disband the SRG, go ahead and see what happens. It's going to create violent streets. The implications are going to be disastrous. And everyone is going to be begging to bring this unit back within a matter of time. We've seen this movie so many times before that it's not worth testing the hypothesis to watch a repeat where the streets are becoming more violent and Mamdani just looks like an idiot in the end. Yeah. It's like the problem with a lot of members of the administration and some politicians in general is they throw all practical ideas out the window just to come up with these crazy proposals, and they never actually think them through.
Yeah, and listen, again, disbanding SRG, look, no one in the precinct, if I'll give you one example. He disbands them, and now we're going to send all those SRG cops back to the precinct. Look, you don't have enough people in the precinct still to handle that. What are you going to send? 5 of them to each precinct? Only 5 people are trained to handle something that's going to have thousands of people, and you have no setup, organization, nothing. It is really, there is no feasible way to do this. And again, the training costs a lot of money. Okay. And if you look at it in that aspect, which is strictly what someone in a political sense would look at, if you're in charge, you know, you're the mayor, you have your little deputy mayors, everyone around you, have this big meeting with everyone. You have to look at things. Oh, by the way, the last part that matters, the public safety aspect, is your citizens, your constituents, everyone that you represent, are they safer without SRG or safer with SRG? Remember the protests that happen every day. And remember that you have a lot of these people that get a little rowdy. They like to go into buildings, like to break things. Not everyone. A lot of it is very peaceful. But we had an incident the other day where I believe 60 people were arrested. And the leader of that protest, who communicates through community affairs, which also goes to the protest with the legal bureau to tape everything. But the community affairs, they're not set up to do what SRG does because they're not trained for it. So 60 people were arrested, but only 25 of them were supposed to, because they went over to community affairs and said, all right, listen, now 25 of us are going to get arrested. 35 other people then jumped in and started doing stuff. So who's going to be trained for that? The precinct cop? No. The community affairs? Forget it. They're not trained for it. They can't do that. SRG. So whether you like them or don't like them, or you feel that they're heavy-handed, if you feel that any cop does anything wrong, then you present this to Internal Affairs, Department of Investigation, or you sue them in civil court. But to just jump the gun and say everyone's guilty without doing anything because I don't like this certain brand or SRG, that is wrong. You are going to leave the public, their safety, out to dry if you disband this unit, whether you like them or not. Because remember, they're trained to do many different things. And you've already spent all this money training them. Now you got to train 30,000 more people to do the same things they do. Does that make any sense, Jack? Because that's how I'm looking at it. I don't look at it any other way, worrying about who's getting complaints and all this other stuff, or if they make any arrests. I'm worried about fiscal and public safety. Those are the two main things that any mayor or president or governor thinks about, and it doesn't make any sense. Do you agree or disagree?
If you're going to govern in a big city like New York, Boston, LA, where you're managing 9 million people roughly of varying ideological beliefs, varying socioeconomic statuses, varying attitudes, right? You're going to have some people who are violent. You're going to have some people who are a little more civil. You're going to need violent and aggressive law enforcement units. I'm not trying to burst the bubble of Mamdani or Jacob Frey or Tim Walz or any of these other people who like to stand in front of the camera and pontificate, but know deep down behind closed doors when they're talking amongst themselves that none of their ideas are actually possible. You need to have violent, aggressive police units to handle people who are violent and aggressive. Otherwise, you're going to have disorder and things running out of control all the time, which is not a sustainable or effective way to run a city. That's really the stem and the root of the problem here. You can't dive away from any of these things. Like, violence and chaos are going to fly out of control to the point where these cities are going to start to resemble third world countries if you even think about getting rid of these units. So it's not going to be feasible. It's not going to be possible. If you want to control, now we talked about with ICE, you don't want to abolish ICE because you can't do that. You want to reduce the number of crimes that people are being deported for. You want to lobby for that? Fine. As it pertains to SRG, if you want to lobby for them to maybe handle less situations which are violent, you want to maybe remove them from protests where things aren't getting out of hand, or you want to create some law where they're maybe parked 3 blocks away in case someone pulls out a gun, someone pulls out a knife, whatever it may be, that's fine. But saying that we need to get rid of them entirely so we can replace them with a $1 billion Department of Community Safety, which is both going to cost taxpayers a lot more money while undermining their public safety, is not a viable solution. You have the Department of Public Safety handling protests. These social workers are going to get killed by rioters, and then you're going to have to answer questions about that. You need to think these things through. It's ready, aim, fire, not fire, ready, aim.
Yeah. And Tabitha Foster says the units are going to be ended at least with Mamdani. I think
I'll believe it when I see it, honestly.
Again, it won't make sense, but I said he might rename them to something else, whatever he's going to make it. But again, SRG, their functions, their day-to-day functions, what you're trained to do, and there's not too many people that are trained that way, will cost you a lot. It's going to affect the budget, which right now, he's going to have to try to balance. He's going to have to try to balance that out. And you know what? Right here, let's see. Michael M. just says, Jack, balancing budget by reducing overtime is problematic in case NYPD paying overtime can be cheaper than hiring additional officers. This key is proper. That means the key is proper.
Yeah, he means the key.
fiscally managing of it to reduce abuse. I also say one other thing that to this, again, administratively, there's a lot of admin cops right now. One Police Plaza, they're doing the job of civilians. Hiring civilians costs less than hiring a cop. I can fill those positions with civilians. You know, all these PAAs that run around and, you know, you could have them doing the cops' work that do administrative work. There's a lot of positions that cops still have to do administratively, but it's bloated. Get rid of those. Those guys go into the street. You just added thousands of people. That's how many people right now are administrative folks. Not because they're hurt, not because they're right now restricted or modified. They're full duty, being administrative, a lot. I mean, I could give you one instance. I mean, in traffic alone, everyone's administrative. Okay, so right there, I could put those guys in the street. Admin, put the civilian. That will, you know, take care of that part. Now, reducing overtime. Well, if you don't have SRG, what happens then? Because you're going to not only train people. By the way, when you train a precinct cop, they're not working that day, which means how are you going to fill that body not being at work? On top of going to transit for that other nonsense to help Kathy Hochul's political career. You see what you're seeing? You see what I'm saying, Jack? It's just a never-ending bubble that in reality, if you really look at it, whether it's fiscally or management-wise, cannot be done. It will absolutely blow up in your face. And you're set up for failure if you get rid of that unit. You are.
And I have a lot of trouble believing that Mamdani is some sort of expert on the NYPD and policing when he can't even come up with a statement on his own. He has to read from a sheet of paper anytime he winds up going to a crime scene, right? So he's clearly uninvolved in that regard. And then by all indications, he's not really playing an active role in the day-to-day operations of the department either. Now, Eric Adams was obviously way too involved with the police department. We weren't expecting that level of involvement. We weren't expecting a de facto commissioner the way Adams was. But at least, like, be involved in the meeting. I mean, it's like watching Hugh Jackson coach the 2017 Cleveland Browns with Deshaun Kaiser playing quarterback. He didn't understand the offense or the defense. He had bad coordinators, and he was just totally lost the entire time. It's the same thing with Mamdani. And to answer Michael M's question, or to address his comment, better put, I don't have an issue with the NYPD paying people overtime and people making good salaries with overtime. I think it's like these egregious salaries that I'm seeing when I look at the payroll of lieutenants designated as commanders making $340,000 a year, getting paid more than the soccer mom. I know she doesn't take a salary, but getting paid higher salaries than people of higher ranks and higher level positions. And there's a lot of people who are making these types of salaries as well. My point is, you can have people in lower ranks doing the overtime shifts, filling these vacancies in some cases. So your payroll is not $9.2 billion. A lot of the cops are going to be very upset to hear me say this, but it's not sustainable. And more importantly, you're not going to be retaining a lot of these entry-level junior officers who have, say, 3 to 5 years on the job because they're getting paid a lot less money. Many of them are commuting from far distances away, and it's leading to officer burnout at a much higher rate. So the problem with overtime is a systemic issue that's been taking place for years now.
Yeah, and I agree. And just to sum it up, because I think we beat this one. Pretty good. State Trained Up said, this is what soft people who live in a bubble don't get. Men need the ability to turn on violence in a second. Mamdani doesn't understand this.
He understands it. He just doesn't want to acknowledge it because it feels unsettling for him.
Yeah, I agree. Like, again, I don't see this happening. You could rename that group or whatever, but to disband them and retrain people, it is not feasible.
And what has he done with the police department and Jessica Tisch since he took office? I mean, aside from walking around with her at public appearances, making an occasional appearance at the podium where, again, he reads from a prepared statement, he's very disinvolved with the department, which is why it's becoming increasingly difficult to take some of his comments and rhetoric seriously. When he's on the campaign trail, fine. We didn't know if he was going to be hands-on or hands-off. But now that we're realizing he's managing like a hands-off CEO that doesn't have any idea what he's doing, he's becoming less and less credible by the day with what he's saying about the Department of Community Safety, about the SRG. Yeah, buddy, I'll believe it when I see it. Keep yapping. He's going to pivot to the next thing within 24 hours too.
Yeah, listen, he still thinks he's campaigning out there. You're now the mayor. I told you he's going to have problems governing because he's never done it so far. You're 27 days in now, or 27. Yeah, you're 27 days in. Everything's kind of pointing in the direction that I told you. He was a novice. He doesn't know how to govern, and you're seeing the problems of that right now.
It feels like he's been in office for so much longer because of the amount of incompetence that's taken place during first the transition phase, now his first couple weeks as mayor. I mean, it's just been an absolute train wreck.
Well, what I want to get to now is the final part of the show. We're gonna coast to the end here is the ICE stuff, right? The Homeland Security stuff. But you had an interesting video of the former president of the United States, Barack Obama. Some love this guy, some hate this guy. I mean, he has his own issues when he was in office and afterwards. So let's hear what he had to say about a certain issue back when he was president.
I'm the president of the United States. I'm not the emperor of the United States. My job is to execute laws that are passed. And Congress right now has not changed what I consider to be a broken immigration system. Mm-hmm. And what that means is that we have certain obligations to enforce the laws that are in place, even if we think that in many cases the results may be tragic. There are going to be some stories that break our hearts. And more importantly, we're going to continue to have an economy that is stifled by a really inefficient system where not only are we deporting folks, but we also have a legal immigration system that is so bottlenecked that it forces sometimes people into the illegal system.
So this is a scary video because Obama actually was, people don't realize this, Obama was a lot more aggressive when it came to deporting illegal immigrants than even President Trump is. It's just the difference is Obama was being propped up as a liberal Democrat who was following the agenda that Congress had put forth, right? And he was just going along with what the majority wanted. Whereas President Trump, the narrative with his administration is he's calling all of the shots from the top of the food chain. That narrative is wholly inaccurate because at the end of the day, statistically speaking and otherwise, under Obama's watch, we deported 3.1 million illegal immigrants in the 8-year period that Obama was president. Now, by comparison, in the 4-year period that Trump was president, we deported 932,000 people. But even, Sal, if you put that on a 4-year trajectory, if you double that number, you have about, 1.9 million people or so. That's still over 1 million less people that would have been deported at that current trajectory under the Trump administration than the amount that was deported under President Obama. A lot of people forget about the fact that Obama was very aggressive when it came to deporting illegal immigrants, and he deported a lot of people who hadn't committed crimes either. So just remember that. It's almost like everyone forgot about that because it's been 13 years since it happened, and because we had someone with a different partisan affiliation between then and now.
Yeah. And he did create DACA, just like Tabitha Foster saying. He did do that because I see right here, Obama deported illegal immigrants, but he created DACA to keep illegal immigrants in. He's a double talker. We know that. But the funny part is that back then it was cool. Right now it's not cool. And what's going on here is there's a quota. You could tell that they went. What started with we're just going to get people that had the ICE detainer warrant has now become that they're in the street and they're doing all kinds of stuff. So do you have anything in regards to anything going on right now? I mean, Kristi Noem is under fire. Kristi Noem, by the way, the Homeland Security, she's the director. She's somehow someone who has zero law enforcement, experience is the head of Homeland Security. Just like Prakash Patel, zero law enforcement experience, also the head of FBI. But Kristi Noem, if you don't know,
this is what she looked like years ago, by the way. I mean, it's probably the most stunning physical transformation in political history.
It is. And Kristi Noem, who's really her lover, side piece, Corey Lewandowski, who should not be near anything what Trump does, because he has a handsy reputation, kind of like a certain chief of department right now in a certain police department does. This guy is taking phone calls and doing things for her. They have him on the tarp somewhere answering the phone like he's calling all the shots. He's another guy that has no experience in ICE. And then I saw what was said, that she's saying, don't blame me because we already know what's happening here. Someone's going to be the fault, guy or girl, right? And I see right here, it says frustration with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is mounting among House Republicans over her response to the fatal shooting of Alex Pretty. And she's probably looking at being impeached. She's probably looking at all kinds. She will ultimately have to take the fall, or someone, for what went on with ICE, with this incident with Alex Pretty. And the problem is not whether you're justified or not for shooting someone, or the problem is, do you want ICE in your city when they're not supposed to be 100 miles from the borders of this country? They're right now, they combine two agencies to pull off this stunt. And we already explained in the last show, they're only trained for 4 weeks online. That's it. They don't get the training that all of the regular agents get and all the cops get, which is why you're seeing the most insane tactics I've ever seen. And people just want to sit there, kind of like Joe Cop, and applaud everything they do, right? But then you find out that the ICE agent involved in that shooting has now been put on administrative leave, a.k.a. modified, suspended. That's the terminology for them. So if everything is fine and dandy, he would be cleared, because they were running to, say this guy's actions were great when clearly they aren't. You don't shoot a guy 10 times, but this is what you get when you have a novice as the head of Homeland Security.
And Kristi Noem is easily sitting on the hottest seat in Capitol Hill right now, because not only has she lost support from Democrats, which was expected all along and had been in the making for a very long time as well, but now Republicans are starting to turn on her too, because they're saying, where is our accountability when it comes to the shooting? And the house of cards is collapsing probably faster than most people realize, because you saw Greg Bovino retiring. You see Kristi Noem like a deer in headlights every time she's up at the podium nowadays, feeling like the end is probably closer than she could have imagined it was a couple months ago. And there's a lot of civil unrest all over America, to the point where, as you mentioned, Sal, someone needs to take the blame. As of right now, the ICE agent is still being investigated, but in a world where there's accountability with governmental agencies, those that are overseeing this agent and overseeing the ICE operations that saw Alex Pretty lose his life, they're going to be held accountable at some point in time. Kristi Noem loves talking about accountability amongst the people that she's deporting. Well, clock's ticking with her, because she's eventually going to have to face what's coming for her as well soon.
Yeah, I mean, I see Hunter NY says that was nuts, watching the feds cut loose Pretty with a loaded gun, resisting, causing damage to a federal law enforcement vehicle. But Eric Sanders also chimes in, well, they're not street patrol officers, which is what I'm trying to tell people. The federal agencies have different legal mandates, irrespective of the length of the training, which is also correct. They're not supposed to be doing this kind of work. And here, Anthony DiMaggio, Noem calls everybody a domestic terrorist. That's very foolish. That's actually Stephen Miller. She blames Stephen Miller, who's a Trump administration official. He's been a speechwriter. He's very close. And there's a lot of things I like that he has done in the past, but they're very wrong with this.
I'd like to touch on Eric Sanders' comment for a second, because Sal, over the course of this show, over the hour and 25 minutes that we've been on the air today, we've gone full circle. We educated people about why DHS was created. And then now everyone's starting to come to their senses, saying, wait a second, we didn't create ICE so that they can go into Minnesota and patrol everyday neighborhoods with normal civilians living there, right? So it's one of those classic examples of where the originally intended purpose kind of gets lost in the sauce, so to speak, when everyone's just emotionally tied up and strung up in the deportations that are taking place right now, especially in Minnesota. As it pertains to Alex Pretty, I mean, it's a tough debate because yes, he was armed with the firearm. Yes, he was going a little bit crazy at the protest. But at the end of the day, it was the second straight scenario where a fatality should not have happened because of an encounter with law enforcement agents. So it was like, when you have one freak accident, people can kind of get upset about it, but say it's only one example. We can live with it. Once you have two instances of that happening within a month, that's when the civil unrest really ensued. That's when the pressure was ramped up to get rid of all of the people who were guilty and were to blame for all of the events that took place.
I'm saying here too, Eric Sanders says there is a bill pending in the Senate to ban face masks, which if you remember, they did that in New York City. First, they said they were allowed because of their the entire pandemic. Then they're trying to say they weren't allowed. So you can't do it in the city. Why are they allowed to do it themselves? So these are the issues. You can't have it both ways. I know to back the blue crowd. You'll say anything a cop does is right. But that's the same crowd or the same people that'll say when Trump said, if I went to Times Square and I shot someone, I'd probably get away with it. And he's tongue-in-cheek laughing. That's the same thing here. Because when you let these guys do what they're doing right now to people in the street, that could be you. And when it's you, you can't complain because you were sitting there applauding like one of those walruses and seals. You need to know, A, the law, B, you have to have some kind of human decency. And 3, do you want ICE in your city? I don't care if it's a blue city, a red city. That's where you have police. Police are trained to do things. And they take out criminals, and they're the bridge between what's going to break as savagery and what's civil, right? That's what they do. But you have ICE running around untrained. These guys are not trained to do this, running around. I mean, I saw them do a car stop. The way they were talking to someone just because they said you were following us. I was followed in my car when I was a cop. I didn't get out of the car, stop the car, with someone go, "What are you doing?" He's allowed to. He could film you. I mean, this is law enforcement, folks. If you sign up for this and are afraid of cameras, which they clearly some of these guys are, or being filmed or being yelled at from a distance, people have rights. You need to learn the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and the state constitution and the local laws. When you learn all of these things, you'll realize that's just Citizen Joe being Citizen Joe, and you just go do your job. Now, if they come over to you and touch you, or if they're waving a weapon, was this guy waving a weapon? They didn't have a problem with Kyle Rittenhouse, but now they have a problem with this guy who would have concealed the gun that he legally owned. These are the things. Remember, do you want ICE in your city? That is the real question. It's not their tactics and this and that. We know at least it's, do you want them in the city? Because it comes with all this stuff. Again, they should be doing civil enforcement. There's ICE detainer warrants. They can go to the courthouse, all this stuff. You don't even need this cooperation with the police departments. But I believe what's going on here is a quota. And they're looking to get a certain number to say, we've deported X amount of people. Just like Obama did.
Yeah, because that's what labels them as successful. It's no different than the quotas in the NYPD. But stay trained up. He brings up a great comment, which kind of addresses one of the issues at hand here as well. True, Sal, but cops are being ordered not to assist ICE if they're being attacked. That's an immoral order. There needs to be better collaboration between local law enforcement agencies and ICE, because ICE has kind of been hung out to dry. Like, I do agree that they've gone overboard in some cases, but they're operating in a position of vulnerability because the public is demonizing them. They're getting demonized by all sorts of mainstream media outlets, and then they're being forced to go out on the street and conduct not only deportations, but patrols of areas where local law enforcement agencies have kind of run away and said, we're not going to be collaborating with you. So in order to improve the relationship between the citizens and the community and the agencies, you must force the local law enforcement agencies to assist in deportation efforts. Because, Sal, as you know, being someone who patrolled the streets of Brooklyn, if you were going out and conducting deportations in neighborhoods where the citizens knew who you were, there would be a lot higher of a level of trust. If you see an ICE agent with a mask who's from out of town coming in and deporting people, they all of a sudden look and sound that much more like a villain. I don't agree with that psychological thought process. I'm just telling you what the private citizens in these neighborhoods are thinking when they see the ICE agencies. So it begins and ends with the governors arranging for local and federal law enforcement agencies to collaborate with one another once again, instead of discouraging that possibility, because it's creating more violence for everyone. I would even go out on a limb and say that these two deaths might not have happened if you had local law enforcement agencies patrolling those areas.
Eric Sanders brings up this point again. No, there are constitutional limitations. You just can't flout the law. Here's the problem. It's up to those jurisdictions. And again, there's laws in place. They can't violate those laws. There is one in New York City that you can't cooperate with them when it comes to the civil enforcement stuff. Now, when they come and say I have a warrant and the guy's in their custody and it's a felony, all that stuff, they tell them, okay, he's in the courthouse, or the judge remands the guy. It's all that kind of stuff is different than having them run around like a bunch of untrained thugs with masks on and just randomly stopping American citizens as well. I don't like that you're filming me. I've seen that a lot. I'm like, my God, who's trained these guys? That's what's going on, folks. You cannot want that. You don't want that. I'm just telling you, you're in for a rude awakening with all this stuff. This stuff needs to be curbed, pulled back. You need to go back to what originally they were doing. They were going to the courthouse. They were doing things the way it should be done. And you won't have all this hoopla and all this crazy stuff where you're stopping regular American citizens and violating their rights and doing all this crazy stuff. This country has rights, folks. People have rights whether you like them or not. And we either live by rules and govern by rules, or we're just a bunch of savages altogether. So you need to make that decision once again. Do you want ICE in your city? That's the bottom line. Do you want that in your city? Because remember, when they stop you, and it'll be too late if something happens to you, but if they stop you and this is you going through what they're doing to certain people, other people out there, then you can't complain. That's all I'm saying. And by the way, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one more thing on that. Look at kind of the political aftermath with all of the events that took place over the past couple of weeks, especially in the state of Minnesota. We showed you Michelle Tafoya's campaign video. She did a number of interviews. We showed you a clip from one with Martha McCallum on Fox News last week. She's running for a vacant Senate seat in Minnesota, and part of her campaign messaging is that I'm going to be different than the leadership we've had recently. Amy Klobuchar today, a very household name within the Democratic Party, is going to be running for governor as well. She made that announcement too. So there's politicians who are kind of, or in the case of Tafoya, someone who has political aspirations. There are people who smell blood in the water because of the ineptitude and mismanagement. And as we get new leadership in some of these positions, it's going to be interesting to see what they do differently. This is a real opportune time for them to make wholesale changes in terms of how their cities and states are being governed, with the law enforcement agencies, the tactics that are being used, the culture, all of the above. Because in addition to mismanagement, I think all of these things were problematic as well. And that's why the deportations and the management of protests have been managed so poorly too, because the culture within the agencies is terrible.
There you go. Lone Sansa said this: can deportations happen if local and state law enforcement don't help? Seems impossible. You have a point, but I have one that's going to trump yours. Do you have enough federal courts and immigration judges to bring forth these cases? Because that answer is no. So if you can't have one, you can't have the other. I said this before Trump got into office. Right now, he's been taking judges away because he's trying to fill. It is a mess, and this would take years, probably a decade or so, to try to fix. So that is the issue. You can't have that. You won't have the cops assisting you. You don't even have the judges to bring these people that you're bringing in anywhere. So what are we doing? So you need to have one before the other. You have to set up the very top, have all those courts and agency and judges in, and then you can start enforcing things. Otherwise, you have what's happening. And again, the cops, should they assist or not? It depends on what the local law and what the state laws say. Some of them allow it. Florida allows it. New York doesn't. Minnesota doesn't. Whatever other state you want to give me, a blue, California doesn't. So it is what it is. It's very unfortunate, but you can choose to live where you want. Just don't vote those policies from those failed cities and states that you don't like. Don't bring them here. Don't vote for that here. That's all I'm saying.
The saddest part about the lack of collaboration that we've been talking about and that you touched on very adamantly in your previous comment is that if you actually allowed for collaboration between local law enforcement agencies and ICE, that would actually solve a lot of the issues that have been created by the lack of collaboration between the two, right? Because the protests wouldn't be as crazy. You'd have local agencies conducting deportation, so ICE wouldn't need to be running around everywhere. I'm led to believe that if you just did that one thing, a lot of the problems would be solved instantaneously like this. And I think the results would indicate that as well. So, I mean, politicians might want to look in the mirror and consider making a change in that regard too.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. You know, Lone Silencer 2 is referencing the Biden administration. You would take a decade just to get rid of that stuff. You are right. And on top of that, I'll say this is that they both, people on both sides love it, because what is an illegal immigrant do that's working, right? They come and take the jobs of Americans but they take jobs of Americans that don't want certain jobs. But in other retrospects, Americans aren't getting the jobs because they'll work for a lot less. So it works both ways, because there's a lot of Republicans that like that stuff, especially, I don't know, guys like a guy that owns a certain radio station is very prominent in New York, likes to do that on his buildings. But that's a story for another day. Before we go, Jack, hit one sports topic, that's soccer. My favorite team, Inter Milan. We won yesterday. We beat Borussia Dortmund 2-0. We advanced in the Champions League. We're back to the same stage we were last year. It's a playoff. It's a two-leg. You play two games and you keep going. So shout out to Inter Milan, also in first place, and Serie A, which is the Italian league for soccer. And Formula One is starting. Ferrari's looking good. I saw Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc out there on the track. Formula One, also another great thing. I love Formula One. Of course, we're not even going to discuss the other sports right now.
Yeah, we'll give our Super Bowl predictions next week.
Yeah, next week is the Super Bowl, so we'll worry about that then. So I guess we're gonna, I guess is Monday. I think we're gonna start at 10:30, not 11:05, because again, it's gonna be a special time. Just every now and then, we gotta do it that way. So on Monday, we'll be on at 10:30 in the morning, not 11:05, and stay tuned to again our X account, YouTube. There's a lot of videos I put up. TikTok. Remember, follow us, the Sal Greco Show on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Follow me personally, the Sal Greco, also on X and on Instagram. You can follow Jack, J_Stern97. He gives his takes on things as well. There's a lot we're going to be bringing, and I hope everyone enjoys it. And please don't forget IACRL.org. Sign up for the Italian-American Civil Rights League, especially if you're an Italian-American and you want to fight for – there's plenty of issues in this country trying to take down statues and all that stuff. We'll come and we'll try to help out with those issues. And also, we're going to have that dinner March 11th at 6:30 at Casa Calabria. We'll be honoring, of course, the great Roger Stone, who, yes, he is half Sicilian. So I guess that's it from another chilly day in South Florida. But as you know, it's always slightly better than Northeast. But once again, we'll see you all on Monday. I hope everyone has a great weekend. And, of course, Florida is a sunny place for shady people.
What I'm asking New Yorkers for is to look back at all the things I've done as a deputy commissioner for operations, the assistant as assistant commissioner, and my time as a not only as a New Yorker but as a police officer. I get stuff done.
Listen, there was a book that came out that Jasmine Ray wrote, and in the Daily News today, it stated that there was a sexual action that happened in Borough Hall. She reported in that book. And it wasn't. You're a dark, sick person, man. You know that? You're a dark, sick person. Your name was on the byline. And there's some of you that have been covering me. You guys could part. Let me do this. Y'all could depart. Y'all could depart. Some of you have been covering me for 3.5 years. Some of you are so sick and dark, and you're the leader of that. You're one of the most dark writers that I've ever seen in this city. And your personal sick vendetta and the sickness of how you think of over-sexualizing a black man, that in the book is stated that there was a sexual action in Borough Hall. That was never in the book. But that's typical of the sickness and the darkness of your sick mind. You're one of the sickest reporters I know. Go to the next question. You're a sick person.